Chicago never really sleeps. It just changes tone. The sirens never stop, they just shift chords. That's what we tell ourselves on third shift, somewhere between caffeine crash and sunrise. My name's Marcus Alvarez, paramedic with CFD Ambulance 19. I've been running calls around this city for 11 years, long enough to learn that miracles take a back seat to response times. On nights like this, the streets sweat diesel and old bourbon. Steam rises from the sewer grates, flashing red and blue whenever we corner too fast. My partner Jules Tran hums out of time to the radio, a habit that keeps us grounded when dispatch starts stacking calls 5 deep. We just clocked out of a nothing shift, 2 panic attacks and a drunk tourist, when the radio tone dropped again. Tones always sound the same. A rising chirp, a few heartbeats of silence, then the dispatcher's clipped voice. Ambulance 19, respond multi-vehicle collision, possible entrapment, Lower Wacker near lake, vehicle submerged, unknown occupants. Lower Wacker. My pulse stuttered. That's where my father died 2 decades ago. Same turn, same stretch of flooded asphalt we call the city's underbelly. I looked at Jules. He shrugged. We rolled lights and sirens. Just another call, until we saw who was waiting. The GPS arrow crawled through digital veins that mirrored the real ones overhead. Orange tunnels, stacked bridges, levels of concrete curling like ribs. Chicago works like a body. Lower Wacker Drive, the artery pumping semis and emergency rigs beneath glass and steel skin. You learn real fast that the city's not a backdrop. It's a patient barely holding pressure. Jules eased the rig through intersections, siren bouncing off metal in constant echo. He kept his humor sharp as a defibrillator pad. "You ever notice," he said, "the radio sounds different downtown? Like we're talking to ghosts under there." "Static's all steel and water," I said, though I'd noticed it too. "Voices on the line down here come slower, like words pushing against mud." Steam coughed out of a manhole, coloring the red-blue wash into fever hues. Dispatch repeated the address, tone distorted, 3 different operators at once saying the same sentence on delay. Jules tightened his grip on the wheel. "Lower Wacker's cursed, man. My cousin pulled a jumper from there, swore afterward the guy thanked him from the radio." The thought hit me harder than it should. I'd been down there that night. My father's squad went into the river to pull a wrecked sedan. He never came back up, caught under a maintenance beam when the current flipped a rescue line. Official record called it mechanical failure. Unofficially, we learned not to say his name near the scanners afterward. Static always answered. The smell of river water reached us before we saw the flashing barriers. Barricade lights painted the underpass walls a rusted crimson, pulse-like. On the far side of the curve, white strobes flared. Squad cars, the wrecker, maybe 2 paramedic units already staged. I counted them. There should have been 2. Instead, I saw 3 ambulances, one idling in the exact place ours would stop, hazard lights cycling in perfect rhythm with ours. "Guess we're not the only 19 tonight," Jules said, trying for humor. But when the third rig's driver's side mirror swung toward us, the numbers painted along its hood read 19A, old designation retired years ago, the same one printed on my father's final call sheet. We dropped to second level, and the world turned subterranean. The GPS lost signal. Towers above couldn't see through so much rebar and limestone. Everything from here on was instinct and muscle memory. My headset crackled, dispatch giving nothing but carrier hiss and a faint loop of our own ID tag. It kept bouncing back at irregular seconds. Unit 19, confirm en route, echoing like someone else driving just ahead of us. Jules's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Feedback?" he asked. "Yeah," I lied. The delay between repetitions was too symmetrical, a pulse precisely 9 beats long. At 2 intersections in a row, the stoplights cycled colors without an order, green to yellow to red, then back to green again, holding unnaturally still each time we passed under them. Outside, the air smelled like wet steel, same as it had the night I was 12, and the rescue team fished my father's helmet out of this river. We turned the final curve. The siren should have ricocheted once and faded, but the Doppler never dropped. It kept rising, louder, coiling ahead of us somewhere unseen.
Sound traveled the wrong direction, as if the call were pulling us toward itself. I shut the siren off for sanity's sake.
Still heard it, faint but coming closer. "Marcus," Jules said quietly, "you hearing that from up or down?" He meant above street grade or echoing through the drainage tunnels below. I couldn't tell. It was both. Two sirens chasing each other in opposite directions. We passed a half-mangled guardrail marked with the usual memorial trash: flowers sun-bleached to bone, cracked votive glasses full of rainwater. The city stored grief one intersection at a time. My chest climbed with adrenaline's first whisper, the calm before we earned it. I told him, "Drive slow, there's a drop-off where the runoff circles." The radio came alive again. A woman's voice, tight, mechanical, maybe text-to-speech feed. "Ambulance 19, on-scene arrival confirmed." Jules and I stared at the panel. We hadn't transmitted anything yet. The rig rounded the floodgate and stutter-braked to a stop. Headlights caught shattered glass, bent metal, and the reflection of human eyes looking back from behind an airbag that hadn't deployed. Mine. For a second, I thought the scene was empty, just twisted railings and the sick shine of wet asphalt. Then my flashlight beam slid through the fog and caught silver metal, half submerged where runoff pours into the river canal. A sedan had punched through the barrier, nose down, driver's side crumpled under the angle. Steam rolled off its hood, mingling with exhaust that shouldn't exist. "CPD already clear?" Jules called. Nobody answered. Not one cop light flickered beyond ours. We rigged the winch lines, water up to our knees as we waded toward the car. I grabbed the rear handle, yanked hard. Door warped open with a cry of metal. Then light from my flashlight fell on the driver and froze me mid-breath. He looked tired. Not dead, not yet. Dark hair plastered to his forehead, same edge of gray creeping into the beard. And when his eyelids fluttered, they revealed eyes my exact shade of brown. Everything inside me locked. Jules cursed. "Jesus, Marcus, you're pale. You know this guy?" "Yeah," I said, "far too well." The driver's badge hung from his belt. Chicago FD medic tag. Unit 19. My name stamped clean across plastic that would have taken weeks to counterfeit. I wanted to back away, but his hand rose, weak, curling around my wrist. Pulse strong, same rhythm as mine. He whispered through broken teeth, "Don't transport me." Behind us, water lapped against concrete in time with his heart and mine. "Marcus," Jules pressed, "he's in shock. We gotta load fast." I nodded on autopilot. We splinted, lifted, carried him out, following every protocol, pretending that face didn't mirror mine to the last scar on the jawline. Steam rose around us until there was no color left but red and blue strobe and water. When we laid him on the stretcher, the sirens echoing from the upper streets made it sound like two cities crying for the same man. Inside the rig, every sound came doubled. 2 heart monitors, 2 sets of beeps phasing in and out of sync. Jules called for a trauma alert, voice climbing high with sweat. "Male, late 30s, MVA, single occupant, unresponse." The radio distorted halfway through, like words slipping beneath water. Our patient, my duplicate, wheezed, eyes rolling toward me. "Don't take me there," he said again, throat raw but deliberate. "Keep driving." I forced professionalism into my tone. "Buddy, you're in shock. His fingers gripped my wrist, same place, same scar from the time I'd shattered it rappelling on a rescue drill. For a heartbeat, 2 pulses thudded together, identical speed. The ECG traced twin lines, one from him, one from me, overlapping in perfect mirror pattern. Jules noticed, jaw slackening. "Marcus, what the hell?" "Focus on vitals," I snapped, because the alternative was panic. We slammed through the tunnel, tires slapping shallow water. Dispatch came back, calm as static. "Ambulance 19, ETA 5 minutes. 30 seconds later, it repeated itself, but reversed. Minutes 5 ETA. Jules muted it with a punch of a button. "That's not echo, that's playback." I kept compressions on his chest, felt my own lungs labor in cadence.
Behind my face shield, the windshield shimmered, reflections of city lights folding inward until the skyline overprinted itself, 2 Chicagos misaligned. We burst into the ER bay, brakes shrieking. The doors flew open, nurses rushing. I barked rapid-fire stats. The e-scanner under fluorescence read his ID tag before mine. Both charts populated same name, same employee number, same allergies. The admitting nurse blinked. Someone copied the file wrong. Then she looked from me to the gurney and back again. Even she couldn't finish the sentence forming in her mouth.
Jules whispered beside my ear, "Don't look too long, man." But I did, and for an instant, it felt like I was the one flat on the stretcher, watching myself wheel past. The trauma room swallowed him, me, with a rhythm both clinical and reverent. I stood in the doorway, still gloved, sleeves soaked to the elbow, watching a flurry of nurses pivot through textbook motions. Intubation, line in, epinephrine ready. The smell of saline and ozone clung to everything. Jules pressed a towel into my hands. "Wash up, Marcus, you're dripping everywhere." My fingers wouldn't move. Through the narrow window, I watched the monitor lights reflect in the dead man's open pupils. The ECG next to his bed began tracing again, flat, then beat, beat, same pace as the pulse in my own wrist. Every rise matched the throb behind my eyes until I couldn't tell which one was leading. The attending doc glanced at the chart, frowned. "Fingerprint scanner's glitching. It says the patient is already in the room." That broke me loose. I dumped gloves into the trash, headed for the sink, scrubbed at my skin until raw. The water smelled like the river under Lower Wacker, that same industrial cold. Detective Moraes from traffic arrived, clipboard in hand. "Need a quick statement. Vehicle registered to M. Alvarez." His eyes lifted from the paper to my face. He didn't finish the rest. Jules intervened. "Copy error. 2 different guys with same name. City's full of them." Moraes half nodded and backed off, already sensing paperwork he didn't want to understand. Inside the trauma bay, the doctors yelled something I couldn't hear. Glass clanged, the monitor's beep collapsed into a solid tone. My own heart hammered in counterpoint, a syncopated echo beating under the constant flatline. When the tone stopped, the room went eerily still. Through the window, I saw one nurse cross herself and another pull a sheet up over my face. Someone outside in the hall called time of death, 03:07 a.m., roughly an hour before I'd even gotten the call. Jules put a hand on my shoulder, gentle but firm. "Come on, man, sit down before you fall." I'd have argued, but the reflected glass in front of us showed only one standing figure, and he wasn't breathing. I spent the rest of the night in a staff lounge chair that smelled like antiseptic and cheap coffee, trying to decide if I should call my mother or a priest. Every fluorescent flicker made me flinch. Jules kept checking the wall clock like if he stared long enough, the hands would start behaving. They didn't. At 3:08 and again at 3:09, it clicked, backward, then forward, refusing to settle. "Find the report," he said finally. "Proof we dropped off a real patient. Then we go home." We found the paperwork neatly printed already, signature lines filled with my handwriting stamped twice. 2 copies, identical down to the smudge of black ink on the corner. At the bottom, a note typed in, "Transport in progress." The radio on the desk crackled. A familiar female dispatcher's voice broke through. "Ambulance 19, multi-vehicle collision, Lower Wacker and Lake, vehicle submerged." Jules' eyes met mine. The overhead vent sighed, pushing cold through the room. I answered before I could think. "Unit 19, received." Noiselessly, Jules swatted the mic away. "Don't you dare go back there." But the hallway monitors along the ER wall lit with a route feed, our own unit number tagged en route again, tracking through the city's downtown arteries. Someone inside our ride was driving right now. Jules swore, snatched the keys from his locker, and threw them into my chest. "We need to see it. If your truck's moving, we end this tonight." Outside, rain slicked the streets to mirrors.
As we turned onto Michigan Ave, billboard ads blurred into white noise static where text should be. The city line shifted, window lights drifting slightly out of alignment like two transparencies misprinted. Even the radio band labels warped, frequencies displaying our own coordinates. We crossed Wacker again at 3:23. The river rolled thick and black under bridge light. Half a block ahead, headlights cut through mist, an ambulance moving against traffic, siren off, tires throwing spray that didn't touch the pavement. The letters on its hood read backward, reversed in our high beams, 91 ECN Elavaca, our own. It passed without sound. For a moment, I saw a figure in the passenger seat, hand raised, finger pointing back toward Lower Wacker Drive. We followed, because that's what medics do. We chase things that run out of time.
The streets looked newly poured, wet black glass reflecting ourselves back in fragments. Every tunnel light flickered to life just before our tires reached it, going dim again behind us, a perfect ripple forward. At the curve by the river barricade, fog congealed into a wall. Jules eased off the gas, and as we crossed the threshold, every sound dropped flat. City gone. No horns, no rush of water, no rumble from the L tracks above. Only the slow tick of our hazard lights and the quiet astonishment of hearing my own breathing inside the helmet. The crash scene waited, exactly as before. Same ripped guardrail, same collapsed sedan still glistening with runoff. Tow truck lights painted the steel red, but there were no workers, no cops, only figures frozen mid-motion, a photograph come to life but paused. I stepped out. The air tasted sterile, cold ozone pressing behind my teeth. Jules whispered, "We already cleaned this up. How can it—" He stopped as something in the ambulance behind us moved. The gurney squealed slowly outward, hinges rattling, and the body, or body-shaped impression, sat upright under the sheet. No mistaking the silhouette. It was me, collar turned up, eyes open, moving a half-second behind every breath I took. The duplicate's mouth traced words without sound, then found voice an instant later, delayed like a bad recording. "You're the replacement." I stumbled back. Jules reached for the door handle, but metal fused under his hand, hot enough to smoke. From every wall speaker, the radio tone chimed again, slow and heavy, counting 3 notes before repeating. Each cycle pulled air out of the space until it felt like the whole undercity was breathing through one shared lung. When I turned to run toward the ramp, distance stretched longer than physics allowed. The exit lights blinked farther away each step, an ever-receding code of escape. Inside the cab window, the other Marcus still watched me, calm smile beginning to widen, patient, waiting for inevitability to sink. Jules slammed the shifter into reverse. Tires screamed, but the rig skidded in place as if the ground had turned to film. Headlights spun across the walls, catching wet concrete that rippled like water. We lurched, forward, backward, direction meaningless. Every road we found emptied back into the same flooded bend. Lower Wacker had become a Mobius strip, a city eating its own steel tail. "I don't care what this is," Jules snapped and hit the lights full. White blaze cut through fog. For a heartbeat, I saw the riverbanks and 2 ambulances parked mirror to mirror, both ours. In the driver's seat of the other, a dark shape leaned forward. The first Marcus, eyes open. He raised a hand and mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then every bulb burst. Glass exploded inward. A single tone replaced the scream of metal, the pitched whine of a defibrillator left on too long. Jules looked over at me, mouth forming a question that never made sound. His outline bleached to white, then is gone. Not evaporated, not burned, just subtracted from the air. The driver's seat sat empty, steering wheel spinning on its own. I crawled free through the broken window, stumbling onto asphalt that flexed like a drum skin. Behind me, the ambulance idled, blue flame curling from the roof lights. It didn't burn, it glowed, steady, cold. Inside, Jules' helmet rested upright on the seat, visor down, reflection showing him still driving somewhere else with me in the passenger chair. Above, it began to snow ash,
fine gray threads falling without heat. The ash stuck to my hands and formed letters as it melted. Stay. Route. Active. I looked toward the river and saw lights under the surface, ambulance strobes winking in depths that no street map should reach. One siren still howled down there, muted and eternal. Daylight came like anesthesia, syrupy slow, numbing instead of waking. I blinked against the hospital fluorescence, lungs full of disinfectant air. My jacket lay folded on a chair. A badge I didn't recognize hung from it. New issue, same number. I was back at St. Catherine's ER, where the night had supposedly started. 2 detectives stood by the door, uniforms too crisp for comfort. The older one introduced himself as Lieutenant Morris, the same name stitched on the investigator who'd taken my statement hours before the crash. He flipped through a tablet showing security footage. "You never left dispatch, Mr. Alvarez. We've got video of you charting calls until 3 a.m. No one took Unit 19 out." "That's wrong," I said. "Ask Jules." Morris exchanged a glance with his partner.
Jules Tran's body turned up downstream at Navy Pier. Burns consistent with electrical arcing. There was no vehicle fire. He pushed the tablet closer. The clip played. A corridor camera showing the ambulance bay, headlights flaring, doors already shut, pulling out with no one inside. My hands shook. A nurse stuck her head into the room, whispering that all vitals equipment in the trauma wing had shorted simultaneously at 0307. That time again. They asked more questions I couldn't answer, why my blood work showed river sediment, how the watch on my wrist contained tiny shards of fused metal. I stared through them into the hallway window, half toward the reflection, half beyond it. For a normal mirror, I should have seen 2 men and myself sitting. Instead, a second me walked down the corridor on the far side of the glass, pushing a gurney toward radiology. The detective saw nothing. Morris snapped the tablet shut. "Get some rest, Alvarez. You're cleared pending evaluation." When they left, the lights above my bed flickered in a Morse pattern. 3 short, 1 long. Unit 19's radio signature. The bedside monitor pulsed with the same interval. Somewhere deep in the hospital, a siren answered back, muted by walls, but perfectly in time. They released me into administrative limbo, technically active, practically radioactive. 2 days later, I met Dr. Harriet Ning, the city's site consultant for first responders. She was a former paramedic who wore her badge numbers on a silver chain, hands steady as stone as she poured coffee for both of us.
"You've seen yourself before," she said. It wasn't a question. I hesitated, wondering how much she already knew. "Doc, the cameras caught nothing." "Jules." "That junction by the river," she cut in, "is built over the same tunnel grid the fire department mapped after the Great Fire of 1871. Half collapsed, half sealed in steel. During the Second War, they turned parts of it into civil defense routes. Signal wires still run parallel to modern dispatch." She slid a photo across the table. Blurred night vision of Lower Wacker's mouth, rows of ambulances like teeth, all ghost gray and driverless, angled nose first toward the river. "This is from a city repair drone last month. No vehicle record exists for them." "What does that mean exactly?" She tapped the mirror glass window beside us. "It means the grid stores every emergency ever called in. If the data circuits repeat hard enough, they create a pathway. Sometimes people get routed along old signal lines." I laughed because disbelief was all I had left. "You're telling me dispatch creates ghosts?" "I'm telling you temporal feedback is possible when a city never stops remembering its own crises." She leaned forward. "Every metropolitan area has a toll like this. Yours started with a responder named Alvarez. I'd say that's coincidence, but the pattern's pretty literal." She clicked off the recorder and folded her hands. "There's one way to close a feedback loop. You retrace the first transmission and make sure someone answers differently." Her eyes caught mine.
"You wanted to save your father. Maybe the city did too. Maybe it's offering you the call again." And for the first time since that bridge, I felt the weight of the radio mic still clipped to my belt, how warm it was without a battery inside. I lasted 80 hours without touching the mic. No sleep, barely food, just the city's hum under my window marking the pulse of something waiting.
Every siren I heard on the street below hit the same descending note at the end, the kind that sounds like radio distortion and guilt. By the fourth morning, the call came again. No tone before it, just my name whispered through the speaker clipped to an empty charger. Marcus, Lower Wacker. I didn't grab a jacket. The night had already turned itself off. The air was heavy and bluish like aquarium glass. Barricades still blocked the ramp, but caution tape means less to EMTs than habit. I ducked under and followed the slope until the city above faded to muffled thunder. The river stank of iron and neglect. The pavement was clear. No cruiser tire marks, no broken railings, not even the debris from last week's incident. Only water moving slow as thought. When I leaned over the retaining wall, lights from above scattered into shifting concentric rings. One bright pulse for every siren line I'd ever driven. Marcus. The voice was close this time, behind the water rather than under it. I lowered the stethoscope, always looped around my neck, pressed the bell to the air just above the surface. The tubing chilled instantly. A faint heartbeat thudded through. 1, pause, 1. Mine answered. They met in sync. The ripples folded inward. A face surfaced in reflection, eyes closed, lips moving with the rhythm of sirens. Mine, again, but younger. Then its eyes opened, breath bubbling the river to dim green phosphor. Someone has to stay for the next call. Water climbed his chest as he spoke, yet the words reached me dry. I was relief for him, you'll be relief for me. The mic on my shoulder clicked without touch. Unit 19, it said softly, standing by. I stepped back, shoes soaking where waves shouldn't reach. The reflection didn't follow, it waited. And for the first time in my career, I didn't radio for backup. I leaned over farther until the cold light touched my face, and the sound of 2 heartbeats merged into one continuous tone. The tone from the water stretched thin until it became silence. Then a new pulse answered from beneath the bridge, slow, deliberate, the sound of rubber turning on wet pavement. A vehicle's shadow glided along the riverbank, ghosting the shape of an ambulance that shouldn't exist. The headlights flared once, inviting. My radio whispered through the dead speaker, Unit 19, active. I knew enough physics to tell myself there was no way forward. Still, my boots found each step down the concrete slope as if guided. Every echo of my movement came twice, the real one, and another half-beat later, deeper, older. When I reached the last ledge, the reflection of the city above inverted, buildings hanging from the sky, all windows lit in emergency red. My radio whispered through the dead speaker, Unit 19, active. I knew enough physics to tell myself there was no way forward. Still, my boots found each step down the concrete slope as if guided. Every echo of my movement came twice, the real one, and another half-beat later, deeper, older. When I reached the last ledge, the reflection of the city above inverted, buildings hanging from the sky, all windows lit in emergency red. Across the river, another bridge shimmered upside down, built of glass and current. The ambulance waited in that mirror city, driver's door open, engine idling low like a breath drawn and held. Inside its windshield, a blue glow pulsed with the name M. Alvarez scrolled backward. The steering wheel twitched twice, impatient. Dr. Ning's words resurfaced. To close a loop, someone must answer differently. I raised the mic clipped to my vest. For years, it had been a lifeline, contact, confirmation, survival through chatter. Now it was a key. Ambulance 19, I said, voice steady, en route permanent. Static bled into the air, and the other rig's siren began, soft enough to sound like a sigh. When I stepped forward, water didn't soak my uniform. It wrapped cold glass around me until the noise of the surface vanished. The driver's seat molded to shape before I sat down. A reflection of my father filled the passenger side, eyes calm, nodding once. Outside, twin cities aligned, one concrete, one made of light. Somewhere above, an empty radio repeated my voice to every copy still circling. And I understood what the river wanted, not sacrifice, continuity. Ambulance 19 would always answer. I put it in gear. The rig rolled west, siren curling under the weight of water, clearing the way for everything still breathing. Morning commuters crossing the Wacker Drive bridge swear they sometimes hear sirens echoing from below, muted, without direction, like an ambulance trapped somewhere under the pavement. Recordings never catch it. Every microphone overloads at the first note and produces only a narrow tone that sits just outside the hearing range of most people. But you can feel it, buzzing behind your teeth. Dispatchers call them ghost codes. They ride piggybacked on live transmissions, repeating a completed report 5 seconds after the reply. No department claims the signal, yet if you play both channels together, overlapping frequencies form a beat pattern that sounds exactly like 2 heart monitors in perfect sync. The fire department still keeps a unit numbered 19 on the roster, though its bay in the Central District garage remains empty. Every payroll cycle, the computer creates a paycheck and a tax number for M. Alvarez, then deletes them before sunrise. Technicians blame data corruption, but the system always resets with printable receipts. Filed, signed, delivered. Dr. Neg keeps her office in a disused EMS training center near the river. At night, she reviews audio from crash sites taken by traffic cams. When the gain spikes, she writes in longhand, line held, feedback contained. Her window overlooks the water. Sometimes a second reflection appears behind her, shoulders in paramedic white, tapping an invisible headset. She nods without turning. Acknowledged. Downstream, fragments of wrecked cars litter the sandbar like fossils. Tourists think they're scrap washed from the interstate expansion 2 decades ago. Locals whisper they've grown heavier over the years, filling piece by piece, rebuilding something shaped like an ambulance under the silt. When barges pass that stretch after midnight, their crews report a rotating red flash easing out of the current, rolling west before it fades. The rumor these days is that if you break down along the Lower Wacker corridor, pull to the right, hazards on, and wait.
Sometimes another rig will appear in your rearview mirror, lights dim, no driver inside. It will coast ahead, leading you safely out to street level before vanishing into the glare of sunrise. Nobody ever catches a unit number, just a faint hand lifted once from the cab window in farewell. The next time sirens overlap on an empty street, don't panic and don't follow. 2 ambulances never leave the same station at once. One belongs to the living, the other keeps the route open for them. When you hear both harmonize, stop where you are, let them pass, and thank the city that its ghosts still answer the call.